For almost 30 years, the mornings belonged to me. He left before sunrise, and the house exhaled. I knew its sounds. The way the light crossed the kitchen floor, the small order I'd built around myself over decades. Every cup and spoon exactly where I'd decided it should go. It wasn't loneliness, it was simply mine. Then he retired. I remember the day. A cake with his name spelled wrong. A card signed by people I'd only ever heard about in passing. He came home lighter than I'd seen him in years, looked around the living room as if seeing it for the first time, and said, "Well, now we have all the time in the world." I smiled. I told him I was happy, and I was. What I didn't understand yet was that all the time in the world would be spent here in my rooms, and that within a few months I'd stand in the middle of my own kitchen and feel like a visitor who had overstayed. The first week was almost a holiday. Late breakfasts, long talks about the places we'd finally go. I let myself believe that was the shape of what was coming. By the second week, the air in the house had changed. It started small. He'd drift into the kitchen while I cooked and stand too close, watching my hands, asking why I kept the spices in that drawer and not another. He didn't mean anything by it. But I'd moved through that kitchen alone for 29 years, and now there was a second body in it, narrating. Then he started fixing things. I came home one afternoon to find the pantry torn apart and rebuilt. He was proud of it. He walked me through the new system, the logic of it, how much more efficient it would be. And I stood there with my shopping bags, looking at shelves I no longer recognized, swallowing the thing I wanted to say, which was, "I never asked you to." I said thank you instead. That night I couldn't find the tea. I stood in the dark kitchen, opening drawers that no longer made sense, and something in me went very quiet and very cold. 29 years undone in an afternoon, and I was supposed to be grateful. I want to be fair because fairness is the hard part. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't trying to take anything from me. He was a man who had gone somewhere every morning of his adult life. A title, a desk, a reason, and all of it had switched off in a single afternoon with a misspelled cake. The house was the only place left to put himself. So he put himself everywhere. He fixed what wasn't broken. He improved what didn't need improving. He followed me from room to room. Not to watch me, he'd have said, but because there was nowhere else for him to stand. But understanding why a thing is happening does not make it stop. And slowly, without either of us admitting it, the quiet I'd built my days around filled with a low, constant noise, not shouting, just presence, endless, well-meaning, inescapable. The solitude went first, and I didn't notice how much I needed it until it was gone. There used to be a stretch in the middle of the day that was entirely mine. Now every hour came with a question. "What are you doing?" he'd ask kindly from the doorway. And every time, a small ugly part of me wanted to turn and say, "Nothing. I'm trying to remember who I was when you weren't here." I never said it. I told myself it would be cruel, so I held it. And resentment is patient. It doesn't announce itself. It just moves into the empty spaces and makes itself at home. And there were a great many empty spaces by then, all the ones where my quiet used to live. For a long time, I told myself I had no right to feel this way. It was his home, too. He had earned this. What kind of wife resents her husband for wanting to be near her? But feelings don't take orders. I could love him with my whole heart and still grieve in secret for the life I'd had when he was gone all day. Both true at once. So I got sharp, short answers, a tightness in my voice I didn't recognize. I became a person I didn't much like in a house I no longer ran, married to a man who had no idea any of it was happening. It came to a head on an ordinary Tuesday. I snapped at him over a misplaced bowl. A bowl, the smallest possible thing. And he looked at me, honestly baffled, and asked what was really wrong because even he could tell this wasn't about ceramics. I almost said nothing. That was the habit by then. Swallow it, smooth it over. But I was tired in a way sleep doesn't fix. And for once, I told him the truth, and it came out harder than I planned. I told him he'd taken something from me without ever asking, and hadn't even noticed it was gone. The quiet, the order, the sense that one corner of my own life was still mine to decide. I told him I felt erased in my own house and had felt it for months while he reorganized my pantry and called it a gift. I expected him to be wounded. He went very still. Then he said the thing I haven't forgotten. I didn't know I'd taken anything. I thought I was just here. I didn't know I was in the way. And underneath his stillness, I finally saw it. That he was drowning too. That he'd been filling every hour because the empty ones terrified him. We'd been struggling side by side for months, both silent, both alone in the same small house. What came after wasn't a clean ending. It was work, and some of it was uncomfortable. There were more sharp Tuesdays before things eased, but we started saying the things out loud. He went looking for a life that was his. A woodworking group, long morning walks, projects that didn't depend on mine, and I stopped waiting for him to read my mind. I learned to say, plainly, I need the afternoon to myself. And he learned not to take it as a wound. The pantry stayed the way he'd built it. I made my peace with that mostly. The house became ours again, but it cost us something to get there, and I won't pretend otherwise. If you're living inside this, I'll tell you what no one told me. Retirement doesn't change one life. It changes the shape of a home and the quiet machinery of a marriage. When that breaks, the resentment that follows doesn't mean you love each other less. It means something real has been lost, and pretending it hasn't will only let it rot. My home feels like mine again. It also feels like ours, more honestly than it did when he was gone all day. But we didn't get there by being patient and quiet about it.
We got there the moment I finally stopped swallowing it and said the hard thing out loud.